Okay, so these chapters are not very short. Wait, this is chapter 1. Wait. So there's sort of like another introduction. Dice Legends is gonna lurk. Sounds good. Enjoy your lunch. All right, so we're gonna read, I guess, the next chapter, but it's not a chapter because chapter 1 is 30 pages later. So this will be interesting. All right. This is my favorite book in all the world, though I have never read it. How is such a thing possible? I'll do my best to explain. As a child, I had simply no interest in books. I hated reading. I was very bad at it. And besides, how could you take the time to read when there were games that shrieked for playing? Basketball, baseball, marbles. I could never get enough. I wasn't even good at them, but give me a football and an empty playground and I could invent last-second triumphs that would bring tears to your eyes. School was torture. Miss Roginski, who was my teacher for the 3rd through 5th grades, would have meeting after meeting with my mother. I don't feel Billy is perhaps extending himself quite as much as he might, or when we test him, Billy does really exceptionally well, considering his class standing. Or most often, I don't know, Mrs. Goldman, what are we going to do about Billy? What are we going to do about Billy? That was the phrase that haunted me those first 10 years. I pretended not to care, but secretly I was petrified. Everyone and everything was passing me by. I had no real games, no single person who shared an equal interest in all games. I seemed busy, but I suppose, if pressed, I might have admitted that for all my frenzy, I was very much alone. What are we going to do about you, Billy? I don't know, Miss Roginski. How could you have failed this reading test? I've heard you use every word with my own ears. I'm sorry, Miss Roginski, I must not have been thinking. You're always thinking, Billy. You just weren't thinking about the reading test. I could only nod. What was it this time? I don't know. I can't remember. Was it Stanley Hack again? Stanley Hack was the Cubs' 3rd baseman for these and many other years. I saw him play once from a bleacher seat, and even at that distance he had the sweetest smile I had ever seen, and to this day I swear he smiled at me several times. I just worshipped him. He could also hit a ton. Bronco Nagurski, he's a football player, a great football player, and the paper last night said he might come back and play for the Bears again. He retired when I was little, but if he came back and I could get someone to take me to a game, I could see him play, and maybe if whoever took me also knew him, I could meet him, and maybe if he was hungry, I might let him have a sandwich I might have brought with me. I was trying to figure out what kind of sandwich Bronco Nagurski would like. She just sagged at her desk. You've got a wonderful imagination, Billy. I don't know what I said. Probably thank you or something. I can't harness it, though, she went on. Why is that? I think it's that probably I need glasses and I don't read all the words. I don't read because the words are so fuzzy. That would explain why I'm all the time squinting. Maybe if I went to an eye doctor who could give me glasses, I'd be the best reader in class and you wouldn't have to keep me after school so much. She just pointed behind her. Get to work cleaning the blackboards, Billy. Yes, ma'am. I was the best at cleaning blackboards. Do they look fuzzy? Miss Roginski said after a while. Oh, no, I just made that up. I never squinted either, but she just seemed so whipped about it. She always did. This had been going on for 3 grades now. I'm just not getting through to you somehow. It's not your fault, Miss Roginski. It wasn't. I just worshipped her, too. She was all dumpy and fat, but I used to wish she'd been my mother. I could never make that really come out right unless she had been married to my father first, and then they'd gotten divorced, and my father had married my mother, which was okay because Miss Roginski had to work, so my father got custody of me. That all made sense. This kid is cute. I like him. Only they never seemed to know each other, my dad and Miss Roginski. Whenever they'd meet, each year during the Christmas pageant, when all the parents came, I'd watch the two of them like crazy, hoping for some kind of secret glimmer or look that could only mean, well, how are you? How's your life been going since our divorce? But no soap. She wasn't my mother, she was just my teacher, and I was her own personal and growing disaster area. You're going to be all right, Billy. I sure hope so, Miss Roginski. You're a late bloomer, that's all. Winston Churchill was a late bloomer, and so are you. I was about to ask her who he played for, but there was something in her tone that made me know not to. And Einstein. Him I also didn't know, or what a late bloomer was either. But boy, did I ever want to be one. When I was 26, my first novel, The Temple of Gold, was published by Alfred A. Knopf, which is now part of Random House, which is now part of RCA, which is just a part of what's wrong with publishing in America today, which is not part of this story. Anyway, before publication, the publicity people at Knopf were talking to me, trying to figure out what they could do to justify their salaries. And they asked, who did I want to send advance copies to that might be an opinion maker? And I said I didn't know anybody like that. And they said, think. Everybody knows somebody. And so I got all excited because the idea just came to me, and I said, okay, send a copy to Miss Roginski, which I figure was logical and terrific because if anybody made my opinions, she did. She's all through the Temple of Gold, by the way, only I called her Miss Patulski. Even then I was creative. Excellent use of repetition in a sentence, part of. Yes, it took me a minute to figure out which sentence you were talking about. But yeah, it's part of Random House, which is now part of RCA, which is, it has a very nice flow to it. I like that. Who? This publicity lady said. This old teacher of mine. You send her a copy and I'll sign it and maybe write a little. I was really excited until this publicity guy interrupted with, we were thinking of someone more on the national scene. Very soft, I said, Miss Roginski, you just send her a copy, please, okay? Yes, he said. Yes, by all means. You remember how I didn't ask who Churchill played for because of her tone? I must have hit that same tone too just then. Anyway, something must have happened because he right away wrote her name down, asking if it was S-K-I or S-K-Y. With the I told him. Already hiking through the years, trying to get the inscription fantastic for her. You know, clever and modest and brilliant and perfect, like that. First name? That brought me back fast. I didn't know her first name. Miss was all I ever called her. I didn't know her address either. I didn't even know if she was alive or not. I hadn't been back to Chicago in 10 years. I was an only child, both folks gone. Who needed Chicago? Send it to Highland Park Grammar School, I said, and first what I thought I'd write was, for Miss Roginski, a rose from your late bloomer. But then I thought that was too conceited, so I decided, for Miss Roginski, a weed from your late bloomer would be more humble. Too humble, I decided next. And that was it for the bright ideas that day. I couldn't think of anything. Then I thought, what if she doesn't even remember me? Hundreds of students over the years, why should she? So finally, in desperation, I put, for Miss Roginski, from William Goldman, Billy, you called me, and you said I would be a late bloomer, and this book is for you, and I hope you like it. I was in your class for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. Thank you very much, William Goldman. The book came out and got bombed. I stayed in and did the same, adjusting. Not only did it not establish me as the freshest thing since Kit Marlowe, it also didn't get read by anybody. Not true. It got read by any number of people, all of whom I knew. I think it is safe to say, however, no strangers savored it. It was a grinding experience, and I reacted as indicated above. So when Miss Roginski's note came, late, it got sent to Knopf, and they took their time relaying it. I was really ready for a lift. Dear Mr. Goldman, thank you for the book. I have not had time yet to read it, but I am sure it is a fine endeavor. I, of course, remember you. I remember all my students. Yours sincerely, Antonia Roginski. What a crusher. She didn't remember me at all. I sat there holding the note, rocked. People don't remember me. Really. It's not any paranoid thing. I just have this habit of slipping through memories. It doesn't bother me all that much. Except I guess that's a lie. It does. For some reason, I test very high on forgettability. So when Miss Roginski sent me that note making her just like everyone else, I was glad she'd never gotten married. I'd never liked her anyway. She'd always been a rotten teacher, and it served her right. Her first name was Antonia. I didn't mean it, I said out loud right then. I was alone in my one-room job on Manhattan's glamorous West Side and talking to myself. I'm sorry, I went on. You've got to believe that, Miss Roginski. What had happened, of course, was that I'd finally seen the postscript. It was on the back of the thank you note, and what it said was, "Idiot. Not even the immortal S. Morgenstern could feel more parental than I." S. Morgenstern? The Princess Bride. She remembered. Flashback. 1941. Autumn. I'm a little cranky because my radio won't get the football games. Northwestern is playing Notre Dame. It starts at 1, and by 1:30 I can't get the game. Music, news, soap operas, everything, but not the biggie. I call for my mother. She comes. I tell her my radio is busted. I can't find the Northwestern Notre Dame game. She says, "You mean the football?" Yes, I say. "It's Friday," she says. I thought they played on Saturday. Am I an idiot? I lie back, listening to the soaps, and after a little I try finding it again. And my stupid radio will pick up every Chicago station except the one carrying the football game. I really holler now, and again my mother tears in. "I'm going to heave this radio right out the window," I say. "It won't get it. It won't get it. I cannot make it get it." "Get what?" she says. "The football game." I say, "How dumb are you? The game. Saturday, and watch your tongue, young man," she says. "I already told you it's Friday." She goes again. Was there ever so ample a dunce? Humiliated, I flick around on my trusty Zenith, trying to find the football game. It was so frustrating. I was lying there sweating, and my stomach felt crazy, and I was pounding the top of the radio to make it work right. And that was how they discovered I was delirious with pneumonia. Pneumonia today is not what it once was, especially when I had it. 10 days or so in the hospital, and then home for the long recuperating period. I guess it was 3 more weeks in bed, a month maybe. No energy, no games even. I just was this lump going through a strength-gathering time, period. Which is how you have to think of me when I came upon the Princess Bride. It was my first night home, drained, still one sick cookie. My father came in. I thought to say good night. He sat on the end of my bed. "Chapter 1. The Bride," he said. It was only then I kind of looked up and saw he was holding a book. That alone was surprising. My father was next to illiterate. In English. He came from Florin, the setting of The Princess Bride. And there he had been no fool. He said once he would have ended up a lawyer, and maybe so. The facts are, when he was 16, he got a shot at coming to America, gambled on the land of opportunity, and lost. There was never much here for him. He was not attractive to look upon, very short, and from an early age bald. And he was ponderous at learning. Once he got a fact, it stayed, but the hours it took to pass into his cranium were not to be believed. His English always stayed ridiculously immigranty, and that didn't help him either. He met my mother on the boat over, got married later, and when he thought they could afford it, had me. He worked forever as the number 2 chair in the least successful barber shop in Highland Park, Illinois. Toward the end, he used to doze all day in his chair. He went that way. He was gone an hour before the number 1 guy realized it. Until then, he just thought my father was having a good doze. Maybe he was. Maybe that's all any of this is. When they told me, I was terribly upset. But I thought at the same time it was an almost existence-proving way for him to go. Anyway, I said, "Huh? What?" I didn't hear. I was so weak, so terribly tired. Chapter 1. The Bride. He held up the book then. "I'm reading it to you, for relax." He practically shoved the book in my face. By S. Morgenstern, great Florinese writer. The Princess Bride. He too came to America. S. Morgenstern. Dead now in New York. The English is his own. He spoke 8 tongues. Here my father put down the book and held up all his fingers. 8. Once in Florence City, I was in his cafe. He shook his head now. He was always doing that, my father, shaking his head when he'd said it wrong. Not his cafe. He was in it. Me too. The same time. I saw him. S. Morgenstern. He had head like this. That big. And he shaped his hands like a big balloon. Great man in Florence City. Not so much in America. Has it got any sports in it? Fencing, fighting, torture, poison, true love, hate, revenge, giants, hunters, bad men, good men, beautifulest ladies, snakes, spiders, beasts of all natures and descriptions, pain, death, brave men, coward men, strongest men, chases, escapes, lies, truth, passion, miracles. Sounds okay, I said, and I kind of closed my eyes. I'll do my best to stay awake. But I'm awfully sleepy, Daddy. Who can know when his world is going to change? Who can tell before it happens that every prior experience, all the years, were a preparation for nothing? Picture this now. An all but illiterate old man struggling with an enemy tongue. An all but exhausted young boy fighting against sleep. And nothing between them but the words of another alien, painfully translated from native sounds to foreign. Who could suspect that in the morning a different child would wake? I remember, for myself, only trying to beat back fatigue. Even a week later, I was not aware of what had begun that night, the doors that were slamming shut while others slid into the clear. Perhaps I should have at least known something, but maybe not. Who can sense revelation in the wind? What happened was just this. I got hooked on the story. For the first time in my life, I became actively interested in a book. Me, the sports fanatic. Me, the game freak. Me, the only 10-year-old in Illinois with a hate on for the alphabet. Wanted to know what happened next. What became of beautiful Buttercup and poor Wesley and Inigo, the greatest swordsman in the history of the world? And how really strong was Fezzik? And were there limits to the cruelty of Vizzini, the devil Sicilian? Each night my father read to me, chapter by chapter, always fighting to sound the words properly, to nail down the sense. And I lay there, eyes kind of closed, my body slowly beginning the long flow back to strength. It took, as I said, probably a month. And in that time he read The Princess Bride twice to me. Even when I was able to read myself, this book remained his. I would never have dreamed of opening it. I wanted his voice, his sounds. Later, years later even, sometimes I might say, "How about the duel on the cliff with Inigo and the man in black?" And my father would gruff and grumble and get the book and lick his thumb, turning pages till the mighty battle began. I loved that. Even today, that's how I summon back my father when the need arises. Slumped and squinting and halting over words, giving me Morgenstern's masterpiece as best he could. The Princess Bride belonged to my father. Everything else was mine. There wasn't an adventure story anywhere that was safe from me. "Come on," I would say to Miss Roginski when I was well again. "Stevenson, you keep saying Stevenson. I've finished Stevenson. Who now?" And she would say, "Well, try Scott. See how you like him." So I tried old Sir Walter, and I liked him well enough to butt through a half-dozen books in December. A lot of that was Christmas vacation, when I didn't have to interrupt my reading for anything but now and then a little food. Who else? Who else? Cooper, maybe? She'd say, and so off I went into the Deerslayer and all the leather stocking stuff, and then on my own one day I stumbled onto Dumas and D'Artagnan, and that got me through most of February. Those guys. I like how the Three Musketeers are just those guys. I like that. I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying how, I said this before, but I'm enjoying how, like, thoroughly integrated, like, the fictional part is with his perspective. Because that's not something that I would have, it's hard to keep track of that, because you're writing and it's like, well, where does the fiction stop and the real life story part begin? So it's hard. I think that would be a very difficult way to write, but I think I like it. I feel like I would enjoy the challenge of it, probably. You have become, before my very eyes, a novelholic, Miss Roginski said. Do you realize you're spending more time now reading than you used to spend on games? Do you know that your arithmetic grades are actually getting worse? I never minded when she knocked me. We were alone in the schoolroom, and I was after her for somebody good to devour. She shook her head. You're certainly blooming, Billy, before my very eyes. I just don't know into what. I just stood there and waited for her to tell me to read somebody. You're impossible, standing there waiting. She thought a second. All right, try Hugo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hugo, I said. Hunchback. Thank you. And I turned, ready to begin my sprint to the library. I heard her words sighed behind me as I moved. This can't last. It just can't last. But it did. And it has. I am as devoted to adventure now as then, and that's never going to stop. That first book of mine I mentioned, The Temple of Gold, do you know where the title comes from? From the movie Gunga Din, which I've seen 16 times, and I still think is the greatest adventure movie ever, ever, ever made. I want to look up Gunga Din because I've never heard of it, and I want to know if it's real. Gunga Din. 1939 Adventure War. The film is about 3 British sergeants and Gunga Din, their native beastie water bearer, who fight the Thuggee. A lot of big words that I'm learning here. An Indian murder cult in colonial British India. Wait, British sergeants, the native guy fighting the Indian murder cult. Okay. I guess that sounds adventurous. Cary Grant, Victor McLaughlin, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. All right, I'll add that to my list of someday I'm interested, but my list of movies to watch is getting very, very long and I'm not watching any movies, so we'll see if that ever happens. True story about Gunga Din. When I got discharged from the army, I made a vow never to go back on an army post. No big deal, just a simple, lifelong vow. Okay, now I'm home the day after I get out, and I've got a buddy at Fort Sheridan nearby, and I call to check in, and he says, Hey, guess what's on post tonight? Gunga Din. We'll go, I said. It's tricky, he said. You're a civilian. Upshot, I got back into uniform the first night I was out and snuck onto an army post to see that movie. Snuck back. A thief in the night. Heart pounding, the sweats, everything. I'm addicted to action, adventure, call it what you will, in any way, shape, etc. I never missed an Alan Ladd picture, an Errol Flynn picture. I still don't miss John Wayne pictures. My whole life really began with my father reading me the Morgenstern when I was 10. Fact. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is, no question, the most popular thing I've ever been connected with. When I die, if the Times gives me an obit, it's going to be because of Butch. Okay, now what's the scene everybody talks about? The single moment that stays fresh for you and me and the masses? Answer? The jump off the cliff. Well, when I wrote that, I remember thinking that those cliffs, they were jumping off. Those were the cliffs of insanity that everybody tries to climb in The Princess Bride. In my mind, when I wrote Butch, I was thinking back further into my mind, remembering my father reading the rope climb up the cliffs of insanity and the death that was lurking right behind. That book was the single best thing that happened to me. Sorry about that, Helen. Helen is my wife, the hotshot child psychiatrist. And long before I was even married, I knew I was going to share it with my son. I knew I was going to have a son too. So when Jason was born, if he'd been a girl, he would have been Pamby, but can you believe that? A woman child psychiatrist who would give her kids such names? Anyway, when Jason was born, I made a mental note to buy him a copy of The Princess Bride for his 10th birthday. After which, I promptly forgot all about it. Flash forward. The Beverly Hills Hotel last December. I'm going mad having meetings on Ira Levin's The Stepford Wives, which I'm adapting for the silver screen. I call my wife in New York at dinner time, which I always do. It makes her feel wanted. And we're talking, and at the close she says, "Oh, we're giving Jason a 10-speed bike. I bought it today. I thought that was fitting, don't you?" Why fitting? Oh, come on, Willie. 10 years, 10 speeds. Is he 10 tomorrow? It went clean out of my head. Call us at supper time tomorrow and you can wish him a happy. Helen, I said then, listen, do me something. Buzz the 999 bookshop and have them send over The Princess Bride. Let me get a pencil, and she's gone a while. Okay, shoot. What's the what bride? Princess, by S. Morgenstern. It's a kid's classic. Tell him I'll quiz him on it when I'm back next week, and that he doesn't have to like it or anything, but if he doesn't, tell him I'll kill myself. Give him that message exactly, please. I wouldn't want to apply any extra pressure or anything. When parents threaten to off themselves if their kid doesn't do something. Okay. Different times, I guess. Kiss me, my fool. Mwah. No starlets now. This was always her sign-off line when I was alone and on the loose in sunny California. They're extinct, dummy. That was mine. We hung up. Now, the next afternoon, it so happened, from somewhere, there actually appeared a living, sun-tanned, breathing deeply starlet. I'm lolling by the pool, and she moves by in a bikini, and she is gorgeous. I'm free for the afternoon. I don't know a soul, so I start playing a game about how I can approach this girl so she won't laugh out loud. I never do anything, but ogling is a great exercise, and I am a major league girl watcher. I can't come up with any approach that connects with reality, so I start to swim my laps. I swim a 1/4 mile a day because I have a bad disc at the base of my spine. Up and back, 18 laps, and when I'm done, I'm hanging on in the deep end, panting away, and over swims this starlet. She hangs on the ledge in the deep end too, maybe all of 6 inches away, hair all wet and glistening, and the body's underwater, but you know it's there. And she says, "This happened now." Pardon me, but aren't you the William Goldman who wrote Boys and Girls Together? That's like my favorite book in all the world. I clutch the ledge and nod. I don't remember what I said exactly. Lie. I remember exactly what I said, except it's too goon-like to put it down. Ye gods, I'm 40 years old. Goldman, yes, Goldman, I'm Goldman. It came out like all in one word, so there's no telling what language she thought I was responding in. I'm Sandy Sterling, she said. Hi. Hi, Sandy Sterling, I got out, which was pretty suave. Suave for me, anyway. I'd say it again if the same situation came up. Then my name was paged. The Xanax won't leave me alone, I say, and she breaks out laughing, and I hurry to the phone, thinking it was really all that clever, and by the time I get there, I decide yes, it was, and into the receiver I say that. Clever. Not hello, not Bill Goldman. Clever is what I say. Oh, this is me with phones. I hate using phones because I never know what to say. I can relate. Hi there. Thanks for joining our book club. If you'd like to join the conversation, I would love it if you would leave us a comment. And if you'd like to see more, check out the playlist.